I'm gonna go use the bathroom. Let's choose that by baby now.
Welcome to the MasterMind Library.
I am, and I found it. If you do lean, hold on, baby. So, banana, Huey, and Dodger, and Huey.
Well, thank you, Trigger.
And Daddy, and Twiddle,
Thank you.
and Twiddle, and Twiddle.
And Trigger is our co-host.
We're
very thankful for having him here.
Cat boy.
Oh, you cat boy?
Cat boy. And add cat boy. And then Tato.
Okay, all right. Well, they call me Ferdinand. Bring her balance, leader of many disciplines. And holy
and cat boy. Let us eat the night. It's day for us.
DJ Man.
For that, and then outlet.
Great job.
Bye.
Okay, all right. So today on episode 122, we are still in Booker T. Washington's own story of his life and work. Very good. High five. Good job. All right, now I'll take over. Okay. We're in episode 122, and we are in chapter 4 of Booker T. Washington's own story of his life and work. So let's go ahead and move to where we need to be at in the book.
Do that, but
yes, we're gonna do that real quick. Okay. Chapter 4. All right, there we go, right there. Make it a little bit larger for everybody.
That's for me.
Okay, chapter 4. We're gonna make it a little.
Okay, that's chapter 4. Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Yep, very good. Yeah.
You chapter 4.
You're speaking so well.
Yeah.
Very proud.
You. You did chapter 4.
So you ready for Daddy to do some reading? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and quiet down. Matter of fact, you ready for nap time? Yeah, you ready for nap time? Okay, good. All right, let's go to nap time. All right. Okay. Chapter 4. How the first 6 years after graduation from Hampton were spent. In the fall of 1875, I returned to Malden and was elected as the teacher in the school at Malden, the first school that I ever attended. I taught this school for 3 years. The thing that I recall most pleasantly in my connection with my teaching was the fact that I induced several of my pupils to go to Hampton, and most of them have become strong and useful men. One of them, Dr. Samuel E. Courtney, is now a successful physician in Boston and a member of the Boston Board of Education. While teaching, I insisted that each pupil should come to school clean, should have his or her hands and face washed, and hair combed, and should keep the buttons on his or her clothing. I not only taught school in the day, but for a great portion of the time taught night school. In addition to this, I had 2 Sunday schools, one at a place called Snow Hill, about 2 miles from Malden, in the morning, and another in Malden in the afternoon. The average attendance in my school day was, I think, between 80 and 90. As I had no assistant teacher, it was very difficult. It was a very difficult task to keep all the pupils interested and to see that they made progress in their studies. I had few unpleasant experiences, however, in connection with my teaching. Most of the parents, notwithstanding the fact that they and many of the children knew me as a boy, seemed to have the greatest confidence in me and respect for me and did everything in their power to make the work pleasant and agreeable. One thing that gave me a great deal of satisfaction and pleasure in teaching this school was the conducting of a debating society which met weekly and was largely attended both by the young and older people. It was in this debating society and the societies of a similar character at Hampton that I began to cultivate whatever talent I may have for public speaking. While in Malden, our debating society would very often arrange for debates with other similar organizations in Charleston and elsewhere. Soon after I began teaching, I resolved to induce my brother John to attend the Hampton Institute. He had been good enough to work for the family while I was being educated, and besides, had helped me in all the ways he could by working in the coal mines while I had been away. Within a few months, he started for Hampton, and by his own efforts and my aid, he went through the institution. After both of us had gotten through Hampton, we sent our adopted brother James there and had the satisfaction of having him educated under General Armstrong. In 1878, I went to Wayland Seminary in Washington and spent a year in study there. Reverend Dr. King was president of Wayland Seminary while I was a student there. Notwithstanding, I was there but a short time. The high Christian character of Dr. King made a lasting impression upon me. The deep religious spirit which pervaded the atmosphere at Wayland made an impression upon me which I trust will always remain. Soon after my year at Wayland had expired, I was invited by a committee of gentlemen in Charleston, West Virginia, to stump the state of West Virginia in the interest of having the capital of the state moved from Wheeling, West Virginia, to Charleston. For some time, there had been quite an agitation in the state on the question of the permanent location of the capital. A law was passed by the legislature providing that 3 cities might be voted for. These were, I think, Charleston, Parkersburg, and Martinsburg. It was a 3-cornered contest, and great energy was shown by each city. After about 3 months of campaigning, the voters declared in favor of Charleston as the permanent capital by a large majority. I went into a large number of the counties of West Virginia and had the satisfaction of feeling that my efforts counted for something in winning success for Charleston, which is only 5 miles from my old home, Malden. The speaking in connection with the removal of the capital rather fired the slumbering ambition which I had had for some time to become a lawyer. And after this campaign was over, I began in earnest to study law. In fact, read Blackstone and several elementary law books preparatory to the profession of the law. A good deal of my reading of the law was done under the kind of direction of the Honorable Romes H. Freer, a white man who was then a prosperous lawyer in Charleston and who has since become a member of Congress. But notwithstanding my ambition to become a lawyer, I always had an unexplainable feeling that I was to do something else and that I never would have the opportunity to practice law. As I analyze at the present time the feeling that seemed to possess me then, I was impressed with the idea that to confine myself to the practice of law would be going contrary to my teaching at Hampton and would limit me to a much smaller sphere of usefulness than was open to me if I followed the work of educating my people after the manner in which I had been taught at Hampton. The course of events, however, very soon placed me where I found an opportunity to begin my life's work. My work in connection with the removal of the capital had not long been over when I received an invitation from General Armstrong. very much to my surprise, to return to Hampton and deliver the graduate's address at the next commencement. I chose as the subject of this address, "The Force That Wins." Everyone seemed greatly pleased with what I said. After the address, I was still further surprised by being asked by General Armstrong to return to the Hampton Institute and take a position, partly as a teacher and partly as a postgraduate student. This I gladly consented to do. General Armstrong had decided to start a night class at Hampton for students who wanted to work all day and study for 2 hours at night. He asked me to organize and teach this class. At first, there were only about a half dozen students, but the number soon grew to about 30. The night class at Hampton has since grown to a point where it now numbers 600 or 700. It seems to me that the teaching of this class was almost the most satisfactory work I ever did. The students who composed the class worked during the day for 10 hours in the sawmill, on the farm, or in the laundry. They were a most earnest set. I soon gave them the name of the plucky class. Several of the members of this plucky class now fill prominent and useful positions. While I was teaching, I was given lessons in advanced subjects by Dr. H.B. Frizzle, who was then chaplain, but who is now the honored and successful successor of General Armstrong, as well as by others. About the time the night class was organized at Hampton, Indians for the first time were permitted to enter the institution. The second year that I worked at Hampton, in connection with other duties, I was placed in charge of the Indian boys, who at that time numbered about 75, I think. I lived in their cottage with them and looked after all their wants. I grew to like the Indians very much and placed great faith in them. My daily experience with them convinced me that the main thing that any oppressed people needed was a chance of the right kind, and they would cease to be savages. At the end of my second year at Hampton as a teacher in 1881, there came a call from the little town of Tuskegee, Alabama, to General Armstrong for someone to organize and become the principal of a normal school, which the people wanted to start in that town. The letter to General Armstrong was written on behalf of the colored people of the town of Tuskegee by Mr. Mr. G.O.W. Campbell. I think it says George, one of the foremost white citizens of Tuskegee. Mr. Campbell is still the president of the board of trustees of the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute and has from the first been one of its warmest and most steadfast friends. When Mr. Campbell wrote to General Armstrong, he had in mind the securing of a white man to take the principalship of the school. General Armstrong replied that he knew of no suitable white man for the position, but that he could recommend a colored man. Mr. Campbell wrote in reply that a competent colored man would be acceptable. General Armstrong asked me to give up my work at Hampton and go to Tuskegee in answer to this call. I decided to undertake the work, and after spending a few days at my old home in Malden, West Virginia, I proceeded to the town of Tuskegee, Alabama. I wish to add here that in later years, I do not envy the white boy as I once did. I have learned that success is to be measured, not so much by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. Look at from this standpoint. I almost reached the conclusion that often the Negro boy's birth and connection with an unpopular race are an advantage, so far as real life is concerned. With few exceptions, the Negro youth must work harder and perform his tasks even better than a white youth in order to secure recognition. But out of the hard and unusual struggle through which he is compelled to pass, he gets a strength, a confidence that one misses whose pathway is comparatively smooth by reason of birth and race. From any point of view, I had rather be what I am, a member of the Negro race, than to be able to claim membership with the most favored of any other race. I have always been made sad when I have heard members of my race claiming rights and privileges or certain badges of distinction on the ground simply that they were members of this or that race, regardless of their own individual worth or attainment. And that concludes chapter 4. On our next episode, we'll be jumping into chapter 5, the beginning of the work at Tuskegee. All right. Y'all be blessed and expose your gift.